Hey everybody, welcome again to Gigs, Get Into Games streams. This month is going to be a little bit different. It's just going to be me, just like the first month. And what I wanted to do was do a couple things. I wanted to kind of go over what we've done here so far over the last 6 months. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about GDC follow-up and wanted to make sure you guys did, follow up. And then I'll just do open Q&A. So if you have any questions, please ask them in the chat. I'll be checking that periodically and see how things are going. All right. So, and then I knew I was going to do that. Tried to get over and mute it. So let's talk about what we've done here on Gigs and talk about kind of what my vision is for the future. And then I'll talk about how that involves you guys. So we've had, a little over 1,000 people watch the streams and give feedback and join us, ask questions, and it's been really great. It's been overwhelming, way above what I expected when we started this. But ultimately, it's been achieving what my initial goal was, which is to create a place where people feel comfortable asking any questions they might have about getting into the game industry or working in games. I want to keep bringing people on every month to help, kind of bring more knowledge than just the knowledge I have. And I kind of have some ideas on formatting and how we'll do that. At the end of this, I'm going to send out a survey to everybody who has watched over the last 6 months. And I'd love to get your feedback on what you think can make this even more useful to you. I want this to be kind of a community thing. I'm not the sole director. This is all of us together. And, if you get into games and, this helps you in any way, I would love for you to come back and be on the show and talk about your process being into games and stuff like that. So we may do a graduates of gigs at some point is my dream. If this can help one person get into the industry, I've achieved my goal. So with that kind of out of the way, I'll send that survey out in the chat here in a bit, but I wanted people to watch part of this before answering the questions. With that out of the way, hold on, camera's kind of messed up. With that out of the way, let's talk about GDC and GDC follow-up. So GDC was last month. It was really great for me, and I want to thank everybody who came up to me and talked to me about watching the stream. That was crazy. That was unexpected. And it was really great to hear from people who have gotten something out of this. It meant a lot to me. It was really encouraging. And, it's kind of weird when you're doing this because even though people are asking questions and stuff, I'm sitting here looking at myself talking, so it can feel like I'm just talking into the void. So thank you for everybody who came up. That was really awesome. Thank you for everybody who came up and talked to me and then followed up with me afterwards. That was even more awesome. But let's talk about follow-up. So hopefully, since it's already April, you've already followed up with everybody that you met at GDC. But PAX East is coming up, and I know a bunch of people are going to that, so we'll talk about it in the same aspect. PAX East, if you're going to that, you can watch the video on GDC and get a lot of information on that, and also the video on networking, and you should get a lot out of that as well. But afterwards, usually 2 to 3 days after GDC ends, you should send out social network invites or emails. I kind of put my business cards that I get or people's names that I get into 3 piles. Put them into the new friend pile, like, hey, I'm going to go somewhere with this person. We talked about like going on a trip together, doing something cool. We had a really good connection. I know a lot about them. I'm going to shoot them a message or email, and then I'm going to add them on Facebook. Then I have this was a casual acquaintance who I'd like to get to know better. I'll shoot them an email and then add them on LinkedIn or just send them a LinkedIn message. And then the last pile is what I call the why did I not have this person's business card pile, or why did I not connect with this person already business card pile. And that's like people I've seen 100 times it shows. That's a pretty small list. But I immediately, within 3 to 4 days after, I shoot everybody an email. I try to remember one thing about that person and maybe one thing about our conversation and be like, hey, I was the guy who blank. For me, it's pretty easy. I am the guy who was wearing a rugby jersey. I get to say that every time, so it's pretty easy. People can remember me. And then once I get an email back from them, I'm like, hey, can we connect on Facebook or LinkedIn or something like that? The only exception for me is other volunteers from GDC. I'll just add them right away. Now, if you may have followed up with me after GDC on Facebook, for example, and I haven't added you back, check your other folder, because I had some weird problems with Facebook last year, and now basically everybody who sends me a friend invite, I need them to message me, and I need to know that you're a real person who I've met. If I haven't met you, then I'll connect with you on LinkedIn. That's how I manage my networks, and that's kind of how I do follow up after GDC. Some people do things a little bit differently. Sometimes I want to continue a conversation I had. So I ask somebody, hey, can we have a Google Hangout, a Skype call, or just a phone call, and continue that conversation. I want to learn from you. I want to get more information from you. The other thing I do is I look back and I see all the talks that I didn't get to go to that I wanted to go to. And I write those down. I put them in a spreadsheet, or I just go on the GDC website and I mark them as, hey, I want to watch this. And wait for them to come into the vault. And then I watch them, and then I usually email the people who gave the talk and ask follow-up questions, because I didn't get asked them at GDC. That's the last group that I tend to email also, is people who I saw speak, who I may not have got their business card. I may not have had time to connect with them or even talk to them at GDC. But I'll just shoot them an email and be like, hey, I was at your talk. It was super cool. Sorry I didn't get a business card. Sorry I didn't get a talk. I know what it's like talking to GDC. It's crazy. There's 100 people pulling you 100 different directions. So yeah, those are kind of my key things to do right after GDC as far as connecting with people and following up with people. The last bit of advice I would give is kind of twofold, which is GDC recovery. So I always stay out in San Francisco one day longer. This is really the same with any conference. I try and stay one day extra and see the area and get outside, because I've been in a conference center for 5, 6, 7 days straight. So I go outside, I go on a hike, I go do something like that. And then I take like a day or two to just recover, to just sleep. So this year I came back on a red eye on Saturday night. I got in on Sunday morning, and I just slept until Monday morning. And then I went to work, and I left work, and I came home, and I went to sleep. And so I just slept a lot over the next few days and got myself back to balance and stuff like that. So those are my GDC recovery and follow-up tips. So now I'm going to go to questions and answers. Well, I'll have answers. Hopefully you guys have questions. JB, who always has good questions and always asks good questions, asked a few here on Facebook, so I'll go ahead and go through those. In the day-to-day lives of developers, what are some of the hardest tasks that a producer is faced with? What about a programmer, an artist? Basically, what are the jobs no one wants to do, but has to be done anyways? So I would say, from a developer standpoint, everyone other than a producer, and maybe even including some producers, the two biggest are meetings. People don't want to go to meetings, myself included. People don't want to spend time in meetings, and people don't want to do any project management software stuff. As producers, we take most of that burden on, but there is some requirement of a developer to do that as well. They tend to not like that, and email. So really for developers, it's anything that isn't development. Like, there are some meetings they like if it's moving forward, or they're getting the information to move forward. So there are meetings they like. There might even be some project management tools they like if it keeps them getting bugs and stuff like that. But in general, anything that isn't doing development, isn't making art, tends to be the thing that people don't like to do. As a producer, I would say probably meetings would be my biggest dislike. And whenever I've had to do budgeting, I've never been a big fan of doing budgeting. I can do it, but I like to deal with people and make sure people are unblocked and people aren't money. So yeah, that would probably be mine. Tell us a story about either your own personal worst interview what you learned from it, or of the worst interview you have conducted, what you feel that person could have done better. So the worst interview I've conducted was someone came to the interview very disheveled, clearly hadn't slept, told me they hadn't slept, and then proceeded to have a nervous breakdown in the interview. And so I spent my hour of the interview trying to get the person to calm down. Immediately after me, they ended the interview and the person went home. The reason that this was a bad interview was because the person was from not the area, and we let them rent a car when they came to the area, and they decided to drive 6 hours round trip somewhere to see something that they'd always wanted to see. Now, if they had just said, hey, can I stay a day longer, we probably would have let them, and they could have driven 6 hours. But instead, they drove 6 hours, and we're also jet lagged and trying to adjust here. So they didn't sleep, they didn't prep right. They just kind of kept repeating the same question. It was just really bad. So what that person learned is prepare the day before, treat the day before as part of your interview. It is part of your interview. The whole time you're there is part of your interview, so treat it as such. The worst that I've ever done, probably the worst that I've ever done was my first on-site interview ever. The first half of it was great, and I felt awesome. But it was a very long interview. It was 7 hours, and they came in groups of 3, and the last 2 groups, my brain was just fried. And it was a design position, and I remember they asked me to design a level for Halo or Halo 2, and I started drawing on the whiteboard before I started thinking because my brain was just like gone. So I just started drawing, and I drew like a line, and then I drew another line, and I was like, yeah, so this is the level, and I like walked him through it, and the guy goes, you do realize you just drew 2 straight lines, right? Is your level just the hallway? And I was like, yeah. So that was pretty bad. And what I realized was like, the interview isn't over until the interview is over, right? So you got to give it your all. And sometimes you have to say, hey, I need a minute. I need to think, I need to go through this. So yeah, it's important to be prepared to go for a while. In your opinion, how do clubs and activities related to video games, but not necessarily the creation of them, look on a resume when you're reviewing for potential hire? Good, neutral, make you wish they would focus more on professional stuff? I would say good. It shows that you're invested in the community outside of games. If this is, clubs at your school or clubs in the area, being part of the IGDA or something like that. To me, that shows that you're interested in making games and you're interested in the community as well. And those couple hours a month probably aren't going to be the clutch, thing for you to finish something for your resume. So it shows that you kind of understand the community is important. People are important. I think it's good. It isn't necessarily the bump to get you over. As we said during the resume conversation, the kind of the bump to get you over in that regard is just showing that you're a well-rounded person, that you do things outside of games. Maybe talk about your hobbies, sports you play, things you like to do, maybe random weird licenses you have. I don't know, like I have a hunting license. I don't know. Just other things that show that you're a well-rounded, interested person are really valuable. How frequently should you completely change your cover letter? Cover letters should be specific to each place you're applying. So each place you're applying. Now, the theme can be generally the same. I want a job because I am great at XYZ. But each job is different. Each company is different. You should tool your cover letter to be about them. For example, when I applied, this is actually a pretty funny story. I applied to work at Rocksteady in the UK because I had heard a rumor they were working on a Ninja Turtles game. I love Ninja Turtles. And so my cover letter was all about Ninja Turtles and how much I love Ninja Turtles and how much I wanted to be part of this company because they were working on Ninja Turtles, and Rocksteady is named after a Ninja Turtles character and all that stuff. And I wrote about how I could provide value and how I could do this and that and the other thing. Turns out they weren't working on a Ninja Turtles game. So they were like, yeah, your cover letter makes you look like you really want to work on an Ninja Turtles game, and we're not. So probably shouldn't come work here. So that was pretty funny. But I did a bunch of research, and just turned out the research was wrong. 5 years of experience or the right attitude, which is more important when considering a new hire? Both. So 5 years of experience, it really depends on the job. If it's an entry-level position, then the right attitude is important. I mean, if someone has 5 years of experience and doesn't have the right attitude, I'm probably not going to hire them. If someone has 5 years of experience and a good attitude, then that's better than just someone who has no experience and the right attitude. But if you have the wrong attitude, no experience, you're never going to find a job. So you need to have the right attitude. No matter if you have 0 years experience or 10 years experience, you have to have the right attitude. You got an offer for that job you want, but the salary isn't as high as you hoped. How do you haggle it up without losing the job offer? Wow, thanks. I'm super excited for this job offer. I'd love to work with you. So I did some research, and I did cost of living research and stuff like that. And I think the offer that you guys offered me just isn't quite where I need to be. I need to be at multiply more than what you actually need to be at. So if you're like, I need $5,000 more, be like, I need $8,000 more or something like that. And then just start that haggle process. Some people will say, this is our final offer. Treat that as their final offer. If they're like, we're going to pay you $40,000 a year, that's how much we offer. That's what happened in my first job. They offered me, I can't remember, I think it was like 35. It wasn't a lot. They offered me how much they were going to pay me, and they said, I called them and I said, hey, I really need more than that. I have student loans, I have all this money, all these things. I don't own a car. I own a car if I'm going to live and work there. And they were like, yeah, so here's the deal. We basically hire everybody at this amount, and then in 6 months we get you to the amount that you want. And it's like, oh, okay. So maybe that's the case. Money really shouldn't be the hindrance, though. If it's the job you really want, haggle. But if they say, we're not going to give you more money, believe them. They're not going to give you more money. Just go with what they offer, and then haggle or raise as you're working. So, I have a few more questions, but if you have any questions and you're live here in the chat, please feel free to ask me questions. Because really this is more of an open time. It's not really guided. I don't have a ton of things that I've planned on talking about. So, if there aren't a ton of questions, then you're just going to watch me dance or answer random questions. So I'll go ahead and answer some of the questions that I normally get that I think are worth rehashing and talking about. So one question that people often ask me about, and I'll rehash because we've talked about it multiple times, but is QA, if I want to do something at another company, but I don't think I have the experience to get in, or the job isn't listed, is QA a way to get in? And if I go into QA with that intention of going somewhere else and they know it, are they still going to hire me? Or are they going to hate me? Yeah, so QA is definitely a way to get into the industry and a way to get into a company. I think most QA people understand if that's what you want to do. I would just be kind of upfront with like, hey, I really want to be a designer. I really want to do this, and I just want to get this experience here. I'd love to get to know people, and start forming those relationships as soon as you get into the building. Start getting to know your other QA people first, and then start getting to know, other people that maybe do what you want to do on the project. Start getting to know them. Start talking to them. Ask them for advice. Ask them for feedback on work that you're doing. Things like that. I know a ton of people who have started in QA and were artists, and they started talking to other artists and, got feedback on their portfolio, and now they make games for a living. So that's super cool. And most of us want to help people achieve their dreams. Now, also know that there are people who get into QA that just want to work in QA. And I love those people. There's not as many of them as you would think, but those that do exist are the best QA people. They're amazing. They just want to be there. So it's really cool. But yeah, so that's a pretty frequently asked question that I get, and I always have an interesting answer for it. What type of skills are undervalued that aren't really learned in school that are really valuable in making games? So that's a really good question, and I think probably the two biggest ones are soft skills, like working with other people, being able to work within a team, communication, things like that. I think are really are probably the biggest ones. Just being able to communicate, really good at communication and things like that. Let me read some of these questions coming in. Ivan's asking about options to get into community management. I felt like anything but get experience managing a community is barely relevant. Community management is really interesting. I think, like you said in the chat, starting your own YouTube channel, building your own community, that is a great way to do it. Building it around someone else's game, managing websites, forums, offering to help on forums of live games, things like that. Really, really valuable. I actually was thinking of doing a management video tonight, but that ended up not working out last week. So maybe we'll do one of those in the future. I'll get some community management people on here to talk about how they broke in and things like that. But yeah, I would say, you kind of identified it. Building your own community is really good. Understanding kind of the development process, I would suggest just talking to community managers and asking them how they do it. Thank you, Ivan. Jake asked, do you think that AAA companies are losing against the indie companies? Will indies be the new trend over AAA? It's an interesting question. I think ultimately, I love the rise in indies, and I think just like film, both should and can survive in the same ecosystem, right? You have your big summer blockbusters, you have your big budget films, and then you have tons and tons of indies. The thing about an indie company is, if you're going to make an indie game, you need to go into it not expecting to, be Notch or John Blow and make millions of dollars, but make enough money to make another game should be your goal. Pay off whatever debt you may accrue, because being indie, you often do that. Pay off whatever debt you might accrue, and then be able to afford to make another game. That should be your goal in indie. As far as them taking over as a trend, I think it's kind of hard to say, because I think there's a huge platform for indie gamers or indie developers. There's tons of different platforms, and there's a huge desire to play those games. I think they are kind of like the new hotness and have been for a while, and I think people will always talk about those games. It's much easier for them to innovate and try really weird things, because that's, they don't have a huge budget and millions of people, or not millions, tons of people relying on them for a living, right? So I do think that we're seeing a rise in more indies, but I think AAA studios are kind of morphing, right? So you kind of have more quad A studios, which are really these huge studios building these massive games. And then you have some AAA studios that are going into more open development, kind of like how we are with Paragon and Fortnite. We're doing this open development kind of early access thing. We're working in smaller teams on smaller projects, or Fortnite's really a big project. and working with the community to build it, because we see how indie has been doing that really successfully, and we want to make games that way. So it's cool to be part of that, and see how games are being made. ASAP Martinez asks, what do you think about wedgies? Oh, man, this is a deep question. I don't like getting wedgies, and giving wedgies can kind of be considered assault. So yeah, watch out. Zach asked, if someone managed to get hired by a company only to leave them for a better offer shortly thereafter, i.e. less than a month, would it reflect badly on that person? It wouldn't reflect great on that person, and I would tell that person to not put that on their resume. Just leave that company off completely, because it's kind of confusing when you look at it and you're like, hey, why were you there for a month? Were you fired? Were you asked to leave? Did the job suck? Why exactly? And it's going to bring up more questions that you probably don't want to have a conversation about. If it's your first job in the industry, I mean, you got a better offer, so that's cool. Go take it. Obviously, if you just uprooted yourself and the first job paid for you to move, they're probably going to make you pay for the move. Know that you could be burning those people. You could be burning those bridges. I don't recommend it, but at the same time, if you get an awesome offer from a company you really want to work for, you got to take that. You can't really be like, no, I'm not going to take your super awesome job that I really want. So yeah, that would be my advice. Let me read through some. I also have a big backlog of questions that I haven't necessarily gotten to in the older ones. So let me look through those. One good question that I get really often is, hey, there's a bunch of jobs that I think I'm a good fit for on, that are open right now at this company. Do I apply for all the jobs, or do I just apply for one job? How do I do that? So I always tell people it depends on how the company is set up. If the company is just like, email us your resume, then it's cool to be like, hey, in the email, this is the job I really think I would be excellent at, but I also provide value in these other two jobs, and wherever you need to fit, I think I can help out. If their website is set up where you apply through the website, then and you have to select a specific job, then it's probably best to only apply for one, maybe two jobs at most, because they're going to be like, this guy just spammed every job. What does he actually do? What is he actually good at? So it is a little bit, can look a little bit bad. So I would just apply for one or two. But if you're, if you're applying for a new job, if you're applying through an email, then you can say multiple things. Melissa asked, since you weren't always a producer, how did you transition from position to position as your career goals changed? I think the best way to tell this is in a story form of really kind of my career. So when I was about to graduate, I remember, I think it was Darius told me, he had said on his website, put the job you want on your business card, don't put student. And I remember sitting down to order my business cards, and I was like, well, I want to program, and I want to design, and I think I want to produce, and I couldn't decide. So I put programmer, designer, producer on my business card, which I had a lot of conversations about it at my first GDC. Well, what are you? What do you want to do? Blah, blah, blah. So I just took to introducing myself as a programmer who knows a bit about those other two things. So I was programming for about 1.5 years, 2 years at my first job, and I was having a lot of conversations about design with people on the team and with the creative director at the company, and we were often talking about design together. And I told him a joke, as a joke, I was like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if we made a game like this? And he's like, ah, yeah. Just kind of walked away. And then like about a month later, he came over and was like, hey, do you want to help me design this new game? And I'm like, sure. And then he's like, do you want to take over the design for this new game? And I'm like, sure. So I kind of started to transition. And for a while I was doing 60-40, where I was coding 60% of the time, doing design 40% of the time. And I kind of looked at the programmers at my company, and I kind of saw that they were going on this exponential track of getting better, some of whom I graduated from the same program in school with, and I saw them getting way better at programming, and I was just kind of like, and I was like, but I'm pretty good at design, so maybe I could transition to that. And so I talked to my boss, and I talked to the creative director, and I was like, what do you think about me doing design full time? And they were like, okay. And so as soon as I knew I was about to make that transition, I called a bunch of designers, I emailed a bunch of designers, I did tons of research online about design. I started taking design courses online. I just really dove into that new position because I just did a college curriculum course for programming, and there was a little bit of design in there, but really for programming, I needed to be on that level for design as quickly as I could be. So I just really dove into it. Same thing kind of happened when I switched to being a producer. I was basically running the teams at my first job. So I was doing some production. I was doing a lot of research there. I went to some leadership conferences and some management conferences and learned about that. And made a bunch of good contacts there to ask questions of. And when I basically got the opportunity to go to my next job and be a producer, I really dove in and learned as much about production as I could. Luckily, I had a boss there who's an excellent producer, and I was like, hey, I'm going to be a sponge. I just want to learn everything I can. So, the biggest thing is as you transition, yeah, your goals change, but you have to try and get on the level that you just were in your last position. You need to get to that level in your new position as quickly as possible, because it's probably a lateral move, not like a downwards vertical move. So you're not probably going to transition from being a game programmer to being an AE. You probably go to be a producer, just because that's kind of how the industry works. So yeah, you got to really kind of catch up as quickly as possible. But as soon as you transition to that new job, and this kind of goes to the question of what do you do as soon as you get your first job, right? As soon as you leave school and you have your first job, I say, take a month, do a lot of learning, but be pretty chill. Just kind of be absorbing, be learning. You did it, you got a job, work as hard as you can, learn as much as you can, absorb as much as you can. But also at the same time, allow yourself to kind of detox from like the craziness of getting a new job. Then at the end of that month, sit down and reevaluate what your goals are going to be for the next 5 years, for the next 6 months, for the next 1 year, whatever. Identify your goals and figure out how you're going to get to those goals. I do this every year. And then on top of that, I try and do it more often than that. But also if I get a new job or I transition to a different position, reevaluate. What are you going to do now? How are you going to get to your next level? What are you going to do to better yourself in the job that you have? And that's really important to do that as soon as you graduate, because obviously when you graduate and you get your first job, or even when you're transitioning from another industry into the game industry, your goal is get job in game industry, right? So as soon as you do that, it's time to figure out what your next goals are. What are you going to do? How are you going to better yourself? So it's really important to identify what your goals are going to be 5 years, 1 year, 6 months, next week, on a pretty regular basis. Melissa, I hope that answered your question, even though I kind of went off into 5 other questions as I was going. Let me look at the backlog here, see what other things we got. I feel like we answered most of these. Oh, this is going to be great. There's just going to be moments of me being silent. Like I said, awkward silence. Ivan asks, how could I approach an indie dev and ask about community management on a low budget? I feel like stepping into a small studio is a good start. Yeah, I think that's awesome. Just approach, like, find a game that you're really interested in that doesn't have community management and be like, hey, I want to help run your community. I'll do it for free. And it's going to be hard for an indie dev who doesn't have a big budget to say, no, thank you. We don't want your free service. But if you can work out some sort of contract with them as well, I would do that. But yeah, I think that's a really great idea. Helping them build their community is going to be nothing but good for them and good for you as well. Jake, I know this isn't really a question, but your comment is interesting, and I'll turn it into a question. I'm in a hard situation right now. I have a good job, but I think that I could make more money in other place and have a better life. Do you like your job? Do you enjoy your job? Because sometimes, if you like your job, if by good job you mean I have a job that is adequate, I go to and they pay me money, then that's one thing. But if you're like, I'm at a job where I love everybody I work with and I love going into work every day, then I'd kind of hold on to that. Unless they're like super lowballing you, it's better to be somewhere where you love the people you're with and you love what you're doing more than just making more money. And it's worth having a conversation with them too. Like, be like, hey, I love it here. I don't want to leave. I love everything going on here, but I need more money. My life reasons are X, Y, Z. Here's what I need. Here's how much more I need. I know that I can go make this much somewhere else. I don't want to leave, but I need the more money. So yeah, especially if you have a family, I think it's worth having that conversation with them, which is, if you're not making enough money to support your family at the lifestyle that you want to have, then you need to have that conversation with your current company and be like, hey, I just, I need to make more money because I have a family. One approach that I've seen people take, which I wouldn't do it at a job that I love. I would do it at a job that I enjoy or like maybe, but not one that I love, is go interview somewhere else and get an offer and then come in and be like, look, these people offered me X amount of dollars. I'm going to take it if you can't come close to it or match it. I really don't want to leave, but here's the rub. So yeah, that's kind of how I would approach it. Either just go ask if you're on a good relationship with the HR team and your leads. Be like, hey, can we have a meeting? Or the other way is to, yeah, it is kind of a backstab. Is go interview somewhere else and come back with it. Yeah, I don't really like that approach. I'm only saying it because I've seen people do it. Yeah, I've actually I've got offered jobs somewhere else, and then someone has said, oh, well, we'll offer you more money if it's money. And I'm like, generally, if I'm looking for another job, it's not something like that. If you're close with your boss, if you feel like you don't want to burn bridges, I wouldn't do it that way. I would just have a conversation with them and be like, hey, I need some more money. Can we upgrade that a little bit? If you're just joining us, thanks for watching. Feel free to type any questions into the chat. We're just kind of going through and answering questions as they come up. And if we don't have any questions, then I go into the backlog and pull out some questions that people have asked that we haven't hit up yet. How would I feel? Jake asked, how would I feel if somebody on my team did that? I would be not happy. If somebody went and interviewed somewhere else just to get a pay raise, I would be not happy. If somebody came to me and said, I want a better life and I need to make more money, then I would want to have that conversation with them. Because, if they have a family, then okay, then it's probably a family need. I'm of the mindset that I want to understand your reasoning for needing more money. If you're like, I want more money because I want to buy a boat, then I'm going to be like, okay, it's really hard for me to want to work with you. But if you're like, hey, I need more money because my kid can't eat, or we can't afford, we're living in a 1 bedroom or something like that, then I want to have that conversation. Or even if it's just, hey, I have some debts that I want to pay off, or my quality of life isn't quite where I need it to be. That's a conversation I'll have. The other conversation I would tend to just be like, go talk to HR. I can't really help you there. Yeah, I know I just totally proved your point. But like I said, if you're working somewhere that you're not like super in love with, that is a way to do it. I would suggest just going somewhere that you love instead. Great question. Really good questions. I was about to ask a question, and I realized that question was for a guest we had. Oops. Sorry. Lost my place. So this week I had a conversation with a guy, or last week I had a conversation with a guy who was interested in switching careers. So currently is not working in the game industry, is making good money, doesn't necessarily have a skill that is directly transferable, but has good technical skills, good learning skills, and things like that. And so it was like, hey, I'm interested in transitioning into the industry. How do I do that? And I wanted to talk about what he did because I love the fact that he did it. So he basically found some local devs through some friends in the area, and he was like, hey, he emailed me his whole situation. He explained what was going on. And he said, can we get lunch? And I was like, yeah, of course. He prepared for our lunch. We set lunch like 2.5 weeks later because of GDC. He prepared for lunch by watching some of these videos and doing some research online about me and about the game I'm working on and stuff like that. And so when we came to lunch, he had a bunch of questions, and that was awesome. I love that he was prepared. He had some questions. He really knew what he wanted to get out of this time at lunch. And so we sat down and he asked a bunch of questions, and I gave him a bunch of feedback. And so this is kind of two-parter. One is like, if you live in an area where there are developers, find out who they are and ask them if they'll go to lunch. Offer to pay and be like, hey, can I treat you to lunch? I just want to ask some questions. Most people will say yes to a free lunch and talking about themselves. The other thing I loved was just the conversation that sprang up of, hey, I have a job that I like, but what if I left that job to go into games and I'm 32 years old and I'm married, right? And it's like, wow, okay, that's interesting, because a lot of people that are watching this stream, especially from my small research, tend to be people in college or fresh out of college. So a career switch is pretty interesting because if you don't have any transferable skills, you may have to start in QA. And he was like, I'm willing to start in QA and learn and grow there. But first off, I would do the full exploration of is there anything I can transfer into, right? If you're a lawyer, could you be a lawyer in games or something like that? Is there anything I could transfer into? Okay, no. Do I want to go into QA, or do I want to stay in the job I'm in right now and learn a new skill? That was part of the conversation. It's like, he has an art background, and I'm like, well, if you want to be an artist, do you want to go work on those art skills, or do you want to go try and do something else? So you look at it and you're like, okay, is this something I can teach myself? Should I go get a grad school degree or something like that? But it was a really interesting question, and my kind of feedback was really that, right? So either decide if you want to go into QA and learn a new skill while shipping a game. That's really valuable. Or stay in the job you're in because it's probably better, more comfortable pay or whatever, while you learn and polish up a new skill and just get to know the people in the area. That's cool. Or maybe go to grad school or something like that. So those are kind of my thoughts there. All right, got some questions. Ben says he's about to finish up an associate's degree in game design and is wondering if he should continue to get his bachelor's. Do you think it's reasonable to get a job with an associate's? That's a really interesting question. I've never basically everybody I've interviewed for game design either has a bachelor's degree or has no college degree. So it's kind of like, that's kind of interesting because it's like, do you continue on to get a bachelor's or do you try and go with the associates? I would kind of measure where you think you are. Like, do you think you can get a job with the information and the knowledge you have? Do you have a portfolio of at least 1 or 2 games that you finished? Or do you want to, continue your exploration and knowledge learning to a place that you're more comfortable with interviewing? It will be more challenging for you to get through, the first round of looking at people's resumes, because if you don't have experience working in games, then they initially look at your degree, and if they're like, oh, an associate's degree, they might be like, it's not really a bachelor's degree. So you would need other things on your resume to really stand out if you're going to stick with the associates. But if you have like a sweet portfolio of levels you've made or games you've made, then an associate should be fine. Oh, Casey, I'm sorry you lost your question. Okay, so Casey asked, I've been working in UX since I got my master's from Full Sail. That's where I went. I miss working 100% on video game UX. Do you think I could make a lateral move to the gaming industry and retain my salary and benefits situation? Yes, you could make a lateral move. There's always need for UX people in the industry. It's probably the fastest growing field that needs people. Could you maintain your salary? Probably. Benefits? Probably. Unless you're at some place where you're making like, you've been out of Full Sail for, just a few years and you're making like 100K. You're not going to do that in the industry. I would be comfortable with having a salary drop. Probably not with the benefits drop. If it's a full-time gig, you don't lose benefits at all. But yeah, that's kind of my thought, is you might, lose $10,000 off your salary or something like that. But you really have to decide if you miss it and it's a cool company, it's going to be worth it. So yeah. Zach asked, how common is tuition reimbursement? I've worked one place where I know that tuition reimbursement happens, but I never really looked into it after that place. I'm pretty sure we have something at Epic, but I'm not sure. Even if it doesn't exist, you can ask. Like I asked because I was thinking about going and getting an MBA, just because I was like, oh, getting an MBA would be cool. Until I realized that would be a complete waste of time and money, because it would provide nothing as far as a benefit for me. But there are definitely places that offer it, but it would have to be in the field that you're in, probably, and continuing your education in some way. So it wouldn't be like, hey, we're going to pay you back for going to college. That would be my thought there. Good questions. I like this question a lot. Do you enjoy your job and why? Yes, I love my job very much. I enjoy my job because I'm in the middle of making games. I'm part of the team. I help make the team great. I love working with people and helping them become more and more successful and doing great things. That's really the value I get out of being a producer. But what I love about making games is that I bring happiness to people's lives. That's key to me. I love bringing that to people's lives and bringing, sometimes, just a nice break from things. Some people, don't have the best lives, and they need something to distract them from that. And I love that we can do that. Ivan asked, how do you deal with harsh criticism you sometimes receive from community or onlookers? Fortnite in particular, due to its long development phase, for example, has been a good example. And it's basically your project. Well, it's a project I'm working on, and it is dear to my heart. There are other people on the project, so it's not just my project. No, I mean, it's all part of the business, especially in open development. If you're making a box project and shipping it, then you really don't have to care what people think as long as they buy it. When I worked on box projects, I never read the reviews. I don't care. I've moved on. I'm no longer working on that game. And I wasn't a designer, so I wasn't going to go look at, like, oh, what did they say I could do better? I definitely listened to the fans, but I didn't read reviews. And if there was a really bad review, I definitely didn't read it. Working on an open project like Fortnite is very different. I have to listen to all the fans and understand why they are giving harsh feedback, why they are upset about whatever's happening or don't like the changes we made. So sometimes it's about having that conversation with them. Sometimes it's about understanding the root of the problem. It is something that is different to deal with because it's not something I had really dealt with. But I've gotten harsh criticisms from people about my life. So it's important to be able to to take criticism and understand the real value in it. Melissa asked, adding on to Ben's question, I currently have a bachelor's, but it's not in game design. Would it be worth it to continue on to a master's or just work on developing a portfolio? If you feel like you kind of know enough, it's kind of the same logic. If you go to a place like SMU or Full Sail to get a master's, you're going to learn a bunch, and they're also going to help open some doors that you may not be able to do on your own. But you might be able to, if you're a self-starter and you already feel like you have some skills, you can just learn online as well. I like kind of, when I was getting in, I needed that more structure of a classroom. But now I tend to just teach myself things. But if I was trying to teach myself a whole new career, I would probably go at least take some classes at a school or take some online or something like that. The difference between a master's and a bachelor's in the industry really isn't that different. But if you go to a school that can help open those doors, that's going to be a big part of the value, as well as the knowledge that you learn and maybe the people that you meet there. All right, so I just put the survey in the chat. So if you're watching this right now, please go check out the survey, give us feedback on how we can do things better. I'll also be posting that on Facebook, and it's also in the description down below if you are watching this on Recast. So I have just a few more minutes here, so if you have a question, please ask it right now. I will grab one more from the archives, and if there's no more, then I will just kind of end it where we lie. Zach asked, is there any new software apart from Unreal that Epic is using extensively? We use a lot of software. Some people use Maya, some people use Modo, people use Shotgun for project development. We use Jira as well. There's a lot of different softwares that people are using. Visual Studio, obviously, Incredibuild, P4. It's really, if you're interested in what you're doing, it's worth trying to find somebody at that company you might want to go to and be like, hey, what tools do you use? What tools can I learn to get better at? That's an interesting way to ask that. Ivan asked the question, how common is it for people to move away from a project in mid-development? If a company is working on multiple games, then it's really common for people to move from one project to another based on whatever is the priority at the time at the company for that person's skill set. Doesn't necessarily mean the other project is not as important. It just means that their skill set is most valued at that time on that project. It happens a lot at a place like Epic because we have a bunch of projects in development. We have a bunch of demos that we're working on. So we have a bunch of different things that are going on. So people kind of move back and forth. We work for Epic. We don't work for Fortnite. We don't work for Paragon. We're kind of just moving around working on other stuff. So yeah, it's really common in a multi-studio or a multi-project studio for people to move around. Ivan, this is a super interesting question, and not necessarily of value to this group, but I'll answer it anyways. I'm really interested in what you think about gamification and how China is literally starting on creating a dystopic cyberpunk situation in their country. Do you know about what they did, and what's your thoughts on it if you do? Yes, I know about what they did. If you're interested, look it up. It's fascinating. I think using gamification to incentivize people to be better at their lives is great. I know it can seem weird, and there's a great talk that Jesse Schell did back in like 2011 about this, and he predicted this, and he talked about the idea that soon we will have progress bars in books. This was before Kindle. We'll have progress bars in books. And every book you finish, you'll get a little like bing. And then our kids will be able to go back and look at every book their parents read and every movie we watched and things like that. That isn't weird for me because I've been tracking every book and movie I've read since 2006. And if my kids want to see that, I'll show it to them. I don't care. You know, yes, I read Schmut. I've never really read Schmut. You know, it's like, I read this. I think it is really interesting what China's done. I think anything to incentivize your populace to be better, like, you know, giving tax credits for voting or something like that is interesting. I think it's the most interesting thing probably for this stream is that, you know, there is a lot of need for game designers outside of just the traditional game industry. There's a lot of people I know that were game designers, you know, just making video games, and then they went to doing education games, and now they're doing, you know, private contracts for the government and stuff like that. So it's a lot of jobs, not just in the traditional game industry for stuff like that. All right, so thanks for everybody for watching live and asking questions. For people who are watching this on rebroadcast, thank you. And thank you all for making this super awesome for the last 6 months and for all your support. Again, please fill out the survey, and I'll post it on Facebook as well. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are so we can keep making this community awesome. Thank you. Bye.